Alrighty, good morning everybody and welcome to the wolfSSL live webinar on automotive security with wolfSSL engineer Jacob. My name is Kajal Subkota and I will be moderating this webinar. All attendees will be in listen only mode. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box or raise your hand to be unmuted if you'd like to ask the question live, as we do host a Q&A session following this presentation. This webinar will also be recorded and made available on our YouTube channel shortly after the presentation. And I invite everyone to follow us on Twitter at wolfSSL, as well as all of our other socials. Also, please feel free to email us at facts@wolfssl.com if you have any additional questions. And now I'm going to give a brief company overview before we move on to the technical presentation. wolfSSL was founded in 2004 by Todd Auska and Larry Stefanik when they realized there wasn't an open source, dual licensed embedded SSL library available. OpenSSL existed at the time, but there was a demand for an alternative that was easily portable, smaller, faster, available under a clear commercial license, was equipped with a clean and modern API, and offered commercial style developer support. wolfSSL was born into this market need with an OpenSSL compatibility layer. Today, wolfSSL secures over 2 billion connections. We have more than 1,000 OEM customers and dozens of resellers. wolfSSL is made up of almost 50 dedicated employees in 2022, most of which are engineers. This progress is, of course, supported by a strong partner network that we're very proud of, which includes DDCI, STMicro, and RTI, for example. Since the beginning, our engineering team have developed several embedded security products, including wolfCrypt with DO178 support, FIPS certification and a FIPS-ready offering, MQTT up to the version 5 specification, SSH v2, TPM 2.0, a secure bootloader known as wolfboot, as well as Java wrappers and JSSC support and commercial support for curl. All of these offerings are accompanied by a thorough maintenance and support plans up to the 24/7 level. We also offer full service consulting. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jacob for the presentation.
Thanks, Kajal. Yeah, and in addition to the company information that Kajal gave, we also have 15 years securing automotive designs. And I'd like to talk about the three main areas of focus that wolfSSL has. So there are three main areas that wolfSSL focuses on, all dealing with securing your data. The first being data in transit. This is done with protocols like TLS or SSH. Possible transfers mediums of those protocols being TCP, UDP, Bluetooth serial, and one of our recent additions, CAN. But they've been developed in an agnostic way so that they can work on all possible transfer mediums. The second area of focus is data at rest. We have our crypto library, wolfCrypt, that supports progressive ciphers as well as well-known standard algorithms. This can be used to encrypt data at rest. The third focus is providing software that assists with firmware updates. This being our MQTT implementation or through the use of TLS also. Having a secure mechanism for firmware updates helps reduce the risk of malicious firmware being introduced to the product. And Kajal briefly went over the products that we offer, but I'd like to do an automotive take. Some of the products that are used commonly in automotive, and later on we'll go into use cases specifically with the products. Many of the products that are offered by wolfSSL are used in the automotive industry. A lot of automotive projects have involved wolfSSL use, which is our flagship TLS implementation. Making use of it also makes use of the tried and true wolfCrypt library for all of its crypto operations. Other projects that we have done for automotive companies involved wolfSSH being used on test rigs and firmware updates. This was giving the ability to log into an SSH shell or also be able to pipe the standard error from a test rig back to a main console or server. One of our latest products, wolfSSL, is a nice fit in the embedded use cases for intrusion detection and prevention. It's very helpful with achieving some of the requirements in the automotive industry. And then we have the Swiss Army knife of URL tools listed down on the bottom there, curl. It's another product that sees frequent use in the automotive industry. It's basically in every infotainment system on all of the vehicles out on the road today. And we have support packages for that curl to help with integration. Also, there's that tiny curl build. It's a slimmed down version of it. They can fit in more resource constrained devices. One of the recent things that we did was Wolf Engine. So OpenSSL had an expired FIPS certificate. Wolf Engine is our way of helping people out with getting a FIPS certificate for their crypto operations without completely having to change all of their code base. It's an engine that just plugs in. All of the products work on popular automotive operating systems. We've done a lot of work with QNX and Integrity. We have ports to VxWorks, FreeRTOS, also automotive grade Linux, and of course bare metal with wolfSSL, so it can fit on small microcontrollers. So wolfSSL has a long history with use in automotive systems. The company, like I mentioned before, has 15 plus years of experience working with and developing for automotive companies. One of the first companies that we worked with actually was General Motors, and since then have expanded to be in 3 out of the top 5 auto vendors, with major customers in Japan, Germany, USA, and France, to name a few of the locations, some of the big locations for automotive industry. wolfSSL products they're used in a broad range of applications, anywhere from the ECUs to telematics to infotainment systems. And with the reliability and support that we provide, 2 of the world's biggest auto vendors they've standardized on us. So they use us throughout all of their production. As the automotive industry advances, more communication between devices and the vehicles is introduced. In the old school vehicles, communication between components was all mechanical. Now with more efficient and sophisticated functionality, the communication between the components has changed to be electronic to handle the increased bandwidth. Some of these components that are being communicated with are system critical. Those, for example, such as the brakes and steering. It's more important now than ever to have security with the intercommunication systems and with any external communication to the vehicle. Having any of the critical systems compromised could lead to fatal results. wolfSSL has a wide array of options for adding security to the data being transmitted, both internally with the vehicle and to external systems. A lot of times when thinking of high communication vehicles, it's luxury cars come to mind. But we're in all of the automotive industry, not just used with luxury cars. We've been used in military vehicles where they have really stringent requirements for the security. We've been also used in agriculture and heavy equipment vehicles. You can think of like the tractors or the farming equipment that's connecting back to a GPS or a navigation system as they become more and more autonomous. We've been used in heavy duty and lightweight trucks. This is from semi trucks all the way down to small pickup trucks. An example with the semi trucks is in like a fleet that has been deployed, and you have the lead vehicle sending back braking signals to tailing vehicles in order to coordinate their braking when they're drafting so close together to make it more efficient while they're transporting goods. And we've been used in both the vehicle and the back end servers. And so this isn't limited to just the automobiles that are out on the roadway. A lot of the automobiles are connecting to a back end server somewhere, either to get information or to increase their processing power on some autonomy. We've been used on both sides of the connection. Okay, the first project I'll be talking a little bit more about in detail was a vehicle to vehicle, or V2X use case. With the increase in car connectivity, it becomes useful for vehicles to share information with each other. This can be helpful in many ways, but not everyone the vehicle connects with may have good intentions. Solving this issue requires authentication of who is being connected to, but it also requires that authentication to happen quickly in order to not diminish the user experience and to keep up with how fast things are happening on the road. In the project for vehicle to vehicle use, we leveraged the DSP, which is a digital signal processor, to get the most that we could out of the hardware being used. This helped in multiple ways. One of them being that the crypto operations could then be offloaded, freeing up the main CPU for other operations. It also helped in high volume cases by being able to run more verification operations in parallel. In the particular project, we achieved over 16,000 verifications per second to be able to keep up with how heavy traffic can be in some of the congested areas. The main crypto library wolfCrypt was used for signature verification, and to help the performance meet the performance requirements, it was built with SP math. SP stands for single precision. It's our single precision implementation that my coworker Sean developed for commonly used key sizes and some asymmetric key algorithms. This SP math was extended to be used on the DSPs available, along with potential caching for performance enhancements when verifying using the same key multiple times in a row. Another part of the use case was a custom library built for dispatching verification operations. This code assisted by handling and receiving a verification request and directing which process the verification should be done on. There's multiple cores that it could be ran on. It could be ran on a couple of different DSP cores, or it could be ran on one of the ARM cores. For this case, we also implemented SM2, which is a Chinese algorithm in order to be used in the Chinese market. This implementation is not in our main branch or release bundles, but it is something that we have available if needed in a project. That SM2 implementation was used in addition to our already existing Brainpool and NIST implementations. One of the big hurdles for engineering in this particular use case was the communication between the cores. So passing cached information for performance enhancement from one core to the next that would then do the verification operation. The data either had to be serialized in a generic way, or either the code on both cores compiled to expect the same key, or excuse me, the same size of data types. We went for the latter with code being compiled for both cores, having having the same size of data types, so that we could avoid the penalty hit from serializing data in a generic way. The project also called for a lot of optimizations and performance enhancements. One performance enhancement, for example, was adding both Brainpool and SM2 support to the SP math. This was implementing a single precision version of Brainpool and SM2, which had a lot of pre-calculated values to help assist for the specific key sizes. Another investigation that we did for performance enhancement was the potential of using HVX, which handles operations with large vectors very quickly. It does extremely well with multiplication. So we investigated whether or not we could plug that into the ECC operations to speed up. Throughout the development, many benchmark collections were made to investigate the trade-off of number of threads being ran in parallelism versus the point where tasks switching between the threads affected the performance negatively. And one of the other engineering items that we did was testing and isolation of which core is being used. So this had to do a lot with the dispatcher, making sure that the specific core, whether it be one of the DSPs or the ARM cores, was being maxed out while all the other ones were not. If all of the verification requests were being sent to it, that is. Another use case I'd like to talk about is a secure firmware update use case. So in this particular use case, it was retrieving and authenticating a new firmware update that would connect back to some server to get a firmware bundle that would then be used for the firmware update. Using both wolfSSL and curl. And with doing this connection, made use of the CAM on the IMX device. CAM is crypto acceleration and assurance module from NXP. It offers both acceleration as well as some heightened security. We added a CAM driver for QNX. This was to help overcome the permissions level from a user application that needed to then load data into the job rings for the CAM to run. And the wolfSSL products used in this project was Crow, as mentioned before, that was consuming wolfSSL, which then calls down to our wolfcrypt library for the crypto operations, which was using CAM from the CAM hardware from NXP to do secure key generation, as well as using the secure keys when performing asymmetric operations. Yeah, does everyone understand why it is a good idea to have a secure key, secure root of trust? Often it's not only a requirement from a lot of the automotive industry, but it helps lower or mitigate the attack vectors by heightening the security of any private key that's being used. So some of the specific engineering detail on this particular use case was, again, leveraging the IMX6 device and vastly improving the security by using the CAM. It made use of black encrypted keys for ECC. This could also be tied in for the keys that are being generated for ephemeral keys during the TLS connection. So a black encrypted key takes a key encryption key from the hardware to then be able to encrypt the key that it's generating. So when it sends off that request to the hardware, the plain text version of the ECC key never touches public memory spaces. It's encrypted before it's passed back to the user. The only caveat with the black encrypted keys is if you go through something like a power cycle where the device has been turned off and then turned back on, that black encrypted key would no longer work as expected. That's where black blobs come into play. And we implemented encapsulation and decapsulation with red and black blobs. Red blobs are able to handle plain text key or just any plain text information being passed in, and then it goes through NXP's blob encapsulation scheme. This can be anything from plain text keys to certificates to any type of data that you want to store into a blob, have encrypted and integrity checked, and be able to withstand a power cycle. And then the black blobs, they take in a black encrypted key. So what they'll do is the hardware will decrypt that black encrypted key, all in hardware. So this is not happening in any public memory locations. So it's getting decrypted there, then encapsulated into a blob. And then when decapsulating that black blob, it re-encrypts the key before passing it back to the user. So this was running with QNX. The most recent QNX at the time, so it was QNX 7.0. And we had created a resource manager to help with the separation of the permission levels on QNX. So the user could call into that resource manager when it's running, which would then execute jobs on to the CAM. The performance of sign and verify with black encrypted keys is close to an optimized unencrypted operation, which was quite surprising. So in the center there is the QNX CAM average speeds, and this is with black encrypted keys. So it has the extra overhead of having to do the encryption and decryption. Oh, one other thing I'd like to mention is we were using AES CCM encryption. So the CAM offers two different versions of encryption. It offers the AES ECB, which is handy for keeping the key sizes the same. But we were using AES CCM encryption, which adds on the additional integrity check, the MAC at the end. So we made some modifications to our parsing and like PEM generation to be able to handle the additional tag at the end of the key. So these benchmark numbers are with the AES CCM encryption with black keys. And as you can see, both the single precision assembly and the QNX beat using software only by quite a lot. The key generation was slightly slower with the QNX CAM with black keys, which is to be expected. It's doing, like I'd mentioned, the AES CCM encryption overhead. The thing that was somewhat surprising was the 256 agree. So the ECC agree, ECDHE was faster than our SP ASM implementation at the time. And then you can see the sign and verify are just slightly slower. Another project that wolfSSL is used in for automotive use is with a TLS connection from the car to a backend server. This includes the option of using the most recent TLS protocol, TLS 1.3. It was a relatively complex network setup in this case, involving both wolfSSL's TLS implementation and wolf MQTT. For those that may not know, MQTT is a publisher subscriber protocol, which can be used for mass updates or just for sending info to many subscribers at once on a network. On a network with varying times of when the device is connected or reconnecting. It handles that well. An example of a potential use case with wolf MQTT could be something such as sending road conditions to all subscribers in a specific city, or weather updates. That would be just an example of a good use case for a publisher subscriber setup. In this case, the device would communicate through this secure connection using a proxy setup with the backend server. The main wolfSSL products used in the project were wolfSSL, wolfMQTT, and curl. Curl is commonly used in automotive, combined with other wolfSSL products. Daniel Steinberg, the author of curl, works with wolfSSL, and we have support packages and consulting offered, which helps streamline the experience of integrating the libraries into an automotive application. In this particular use case, no major consulting was done with the project. Most of the engineering efforts involved around it were with supporting integration and assisting with resolving any issues that came up. With wolfMQTT, the project was using the V5 implementation and also using multi-threading. We did some work around multi-threading to make it more seamless and better for the particular use case. And we also resolved some minor issues with wolfMQTT that came up during the integration. Another one that wolfSSL has been used with is autonomous driving software. The automotive industry has been progressing towards fully autonomous vehicles, and the need for security with communications and critical system operations when a heavy vehicle is controlling itself down the highway is paramount. In the software application, wolfSSL was used for connection to the server for map updates. The connection to the server for map updates was used with assisting in navigation. This up-to-date map setup for navigating through roadways was used in an advanced version of cruise control that assisted not only with maintaining speed, but it also helped with maintaining position on the road. Some of the wolfSSL products used in the setup were the main wolfSSL library. And in addition to that, it used the TLS 1.3 implementation with wolfSSL. This was also used with one of the many automotive OSs that we support. It was used with Green Hills. For security reasons and to fulfill the industry requirements, many of the projects we work with are using either QNX or Green Hills for the operating system. We fully support both, along with other potential operating environments that might be used in the automotive industry. One of those being something like a bare metal environment with very small microcontrollers. A few of the engineering specific details about this project was the porting work done to run on an ST Telemaco board. Porting to a new system often requires setting up the hardware source of entropy if available, handling any mutex uses if using a multi-threaded build, and setting the types correctly for the hardware, among other small modifications. wolfSSL has been set up in such a way to abstract out most if not all of our porting calls. So it becomes a relatively quick process for porting it to new devices. People will usually hire us to port to a new device just because we have such a familiarity with the code, since all of the original developers are still on the team, that we can do the porting much quicker. In this case, we also made use of hardware acceleration. The CPU being one of the ARM versions, it's at A7. It could use our existing ARM assembly accelerators, in addition to what hardware acceleration was available on the board. Some MISR-C effort was also done with this project, but it was done with specific wolfcrypt source files. most cases we have found that MISRC is not a hard requirement in the end of the project, which was the case here as well. A lot of automotive projects require static analysis reports to be compliant with the industry requirements. And these static analysis reports, though, often do not have to be MISRC, only a static analysis report of some kind. Another automotive specific use case that we support is NTP for AutoZAR. That's a network time protocol. It's used with time stamping events for smart cars. It helps with keeping the ecosystem time synced together. One of the examples for this would be brakes having the same time reference as machine vision systems, which is pretty easy to imagine why that would be important. If your machine vision system is detecting some kind of obstacle in the way, you want the time that it detects that obstacle to be synced up with the time for brakes to react. To that end, it also is maintaining a constant sub-millisecond time in the vehicle. This helps reduce any delays between communication between the devices. It's also a cryptographically secure reference of time, which is important if you have a malicious attempt to change the time reference, as far as like when the machine vision system stamps finding an obstacle in the way. You don't want it to be changed to a later time than what it actually is, and have the vehicle or other components react at the wrong time. It's a critical but simple facility. And a little bit more on why we need NTP on a car, other than the critical systems that I brought up earlier, is it's a sync of smart car apps. So this could be more like a quality of life with your syncing of your phone to your vehicle, or it's also used in forensic reconstruction of events. So if for whatever reason a crash does happen, when going through and reviewing the events leading up to the crash, you'd want to see them in the correct sequential order, not time stamped out of order. A little bit about how wolfSentry fits into automotive industry. So wolfSentry has helped to identify and mitigate network intrusions. So it's a intrusion detection and prevention system. At the heart, it's a very good firewall for filtering bus traffic, but it has, in addition to its firewall capabilities, the ability to detect an anomaly and make a report of it. If the rule has been written to not only detect, but also to react, it can dynamically respond to block bus spam. So for whatever reason, if you have a malicious action where some bus that's communicating is being spammed, wolfSentry would be a good fit for detecting that denial of service, that spam, and also blocking it. It's a driver and manufacturer alerts through callbacks. wolfSentry is set up in such a way so that it's agnostic to what application you're trying to use it in. You would implement some of the callbacks and then add the rules specific to your use case. We have tie-ins for wolfSSL to demonstrate how to set up and use those callbacks. We also have tie-ins to LWIP to demonstrate how to use it with a TCP stack. And we're constantly expanding the tie-ins and examples that we have with those callbacks. wolfSentry helps with meeting the ISO 21434 requirements. It's designed for embedded devices, so it can be used on the embedded devices throughout the automotive industry. It has a dynamic rule generation and transactional rule changes on the fly. So when it's reading its rules, it's using basically a JSON parser. So it's easy to update the rules as they need to be updated. And then it can record and or react to events. It can be ran in a passive state where it's just recording, or if the rule's set to be more aggressive, it can not only passively record, it can react to the event by blocking it. wolfSSL also helps with the 21434 requirements. It's secure transmission of the event data and secure general communications between both microcontrollers and servers. As I mentioned before, we can run all the way on the bare metal environment. And then we also do well when ran on larger server farms, more devices that have less resource constraints. We also have wolf boot, which does secure firmware updates. It helps with meeting the ISO 21434 requirements. One of the neat features of wolf boot is the rollback feature. So this is helping to not accidentally brick devices. If there's an issue with one of the updates or it gets shut off during the update, it's able to roll back to the previous firmware version. One of the new things that we've added recently is TLS over CAN. So CAN is a controller area network. TLS offers the usual authenticate, integrity, and encrypt. So it gives you the peace of mind when sending data across to a CAN. CAN is usually used for intra-car security. And at the moment, and in most cases, is lacking in security, if there's any security at all. So our solution to that helps prevent potential physical attacks. These would be attacks where someone with a USB is able to plug it into the vehicle, or they're able to tap into a wire on the vehicle itself. And a little bit about how we implemented that in practice. So we use the ISO-TP wrapper with variable minimum packet delay. Some of you familiar with the CAN may know that it only allows for an 8-byte max packet size, which doesn't lend itself well to TCP connections, let alone TLS connections, which can have a 16K packet size. So this ISO-TP wraps that smaller packet size and allows the bus to be available for other packets. It's also adaptable for the CAN FD. So we set it up in such a way so that in the future we can use it with the CAN FD. Our implementation and example uses TLS 1.3. The reason being just because it has reduced round trips for handshakes. It's also the most recent TLS protocol. It can be used with TLS 1.2 if wanted, but the TLS 1.3 with the reduced round trip handshakes, works well with the more resource constrained connection. It has a simple callback interface, and it's platform agnostic. So we have a lot of testing that we do here. Testing in order to avoid crashes both in the software and in this particular case with automotive crashes out on the roadway. We have benchmark tests on real hardware. So multiple boards are getting benchmark tests. We keep track of code size versus boot time, measure memory resources, and manually run additional resource collection to update usage figures. Some functional tests are running on a real STM32F407. This is with one of my coworkers over in Amsterdam. It covers a lot with the wolf boot tests, which is useful in the automotive industry. So a lot of these tests that I've listed here are for more like the automotive use cases. So it covers forward update and rollback with wolf boot, SPI flash tests, TPM tests with using the Infineon TPM module, testing with combinations of possible DSA plus SHA algorithm with wolf. We have our rainbow of testing. This is applied not only to just wolfSSL, it's also applied to all of our products. It's a little bit of how we prioritize testing and adding of new tests. There's some overlap in between some of these layers, but at the center of it is the API tests, unit tests. So this is functionality. So our highest priority when creating new tests for products is to test out the functionality. Then after that is the peer reviews. So it's each piece of code before it gets into wolfSSL is reviewed by one of our senior developers. And then we have all of our static analysis tests. To mention a few of them, we have like the scan build and fsanitize address. We also run coverity tests for static analysis and infer. Well, infer could fit into the memory leak checks, I guess. Memory leak checks, we also run Valgrind on every piece of code that makes its way into the wolfSSL master branch. Then on top of that, we have the interoperability tests. We do interoperability tests with other TLS implementations out there. And when it comes around to our release cycle, we also do interoperability tests with the major browsers to make sure that we still connect successfully. Cipher suites and certificates. Our certificates directory is getting quite large with all of what we have listed as example certificates. Those example certificates are also tested regularly to make sure that we are still handling certificates as we should. And we have regression testing. Some of those make their way into the unit tests and API tests. We also have some regression tests that we have just on our private and local machines. We have many builds and options. So we set up with Jenkins to run a lot of builds, some builds that we know that customers are using out in the field and some that we just want to continue to work, along with testing new builds when a release cycle is in process. We also do product testing. So this is wolfSSL in combination to our other products, wolfSSL in combination to FIPS use, SSH use, MQTT use. We have testing on multiple operating systems, testing with hardware acceleration, other compiler options, compilers that we are known to work with. And then we have near the top there are fuzzers. So we're integrated with OSS fuzz, and we have some internal fuzzers that we run. And third-party testing, we are open source. So the open source community is one of the third-party testing that we have listed there, but we also have a couple of contractors for fuzz testing, one being with Guido, and universities that contact us with testing that they've also done. So we have benchmarks testing that we do. Near the end there's the wrappers. So during a release cycle, we make sure the C# wrapper, JNI, Python works successfully. And then it's kind of a catch-all at the edge there is with the new tests that we do. So at this point, I think I'll go ahead and open it up for any questions that might have come up.
Awesome. And as a reminder to everyone, please feel free to use the Q&A box or the chat box to ask your question during this time. We have a couple of questions for you here. What are the size of data to be encrypted, decrypted, or signed?
The size of data to be encrypted, decrypted, or signed?
Yeah.
So that can vary. Lots of times you would do like a hash with SHA-256 before passing it in to be signed or verified. In that case, it would be 32 bytes. but that all varies depending on which algorithm you're using.
Awesome. What are the advantages and disadvantages to using hardware-based crypto?
So most of the time, it's all advantages to using the hardware-based crypto. You get a heightened security, especially with the black keys that I was referring to earlier with the CAM. And often you get a increased in performance and offloading the operations so that you free up the CPU for other uses. The only disadvantages potentially would be we've seen in a few cases with hardware acceleration where our SP implementation was actually faster. That's very rarely, but sometimes it can be faster to do it with our SP implementation than the hardware.
Awesome. Out of curiosity, are there any plans to incorporate post-quantum crypto? And if so, what is the expected timeline?
So we do have post-quantum crypto right now. libqs, I think I get that correct. libqs is one. My coworker Anthony has done a lot of work around that. So we have an enable option to be able to use it with a TLS connection. That exists in our most current release.
Fantastic. For autonomous vehicles, how do you balance security versus safety/availability, i.e. if a control message fails validation?
Okay, that's a hard question. I might have to refer you to the facts at wolfSSL.com for that, and we can talk more in detail about how we balance that. Obviously, you want the safety to be at the top, and usually that means that we are doing a specific time frame for how long an operation can last. We've had a few cases where an ACC operation could only last for so long it can't block all the way till it's done. But yeah, we could go into more detail on that through our facts at wolfSSL.com.
Okay, awesome. Is there already an integration into Green Hills and QNX?
Yeah, we can be used with both of them. We've ported to both Integrity from Green Hills, and also with QNX. So yes.
Awesome. This person wanted to know, why do we use NTP and not SNTP?
I would have to refer to my coworker Danielle about that. So if you contact the facts at wolfSSL.com, we could go into more detail about our NTP.
Okay, awesome. Which bus traffic do you check with Wolf Sentry? CAN, Ethernet, or something else?
So Wolf Sentry is written in an agnostic way. It just has those callbacks that can be tied into basically any stack or application. And then you would write a rule for which particular traffic that you're wanting to detect any anomalies on. And we have some examples. We can also go and help with, set up if you want to set it on a specific system, such as like CAN or one of the other buses.
Fantastic. How stringent was time synchronization specification for NTP required to be?
So I know it was sub-millisecond. I don't know the specifics below the sub-millisecond. We would have to get back to you from facts at wolfSSL.com out in the exact time slice for how stringent it was with synchronous.
Okay, awesome. Is there a concern of the cost of TLS session establishment, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, there is the overhead when you add TLS security to any connection. It we try to reduce that overhead as much as possible. We have, like the TLS 1.3 has reduced to round trip for the handshakes, so it's nice to use that one to try and reduce the initial connection. We also have our SP implementation that increases the performance of the asymmetric algorithms, and the asymmetric algorithms are what take up the bulk of the initial handshake. So we do try and reduce the impact as much as possible. You can't ever get it to zero, but we do take steps to try and reduce it.
Awesome. And then these questions are in regard to PostQuantum crypto. Have you benchmarked PostQuantum crypto, and any reason why you did not show the PostQuantum benchmarks here?
Yeah, I believe that there is some benchmarks out there. I don't have them readily available. I do remember that being one of the things that my coworker did. And I think we've posted some blogs, if I remember correctly, about the PostQuantum.
Yes, we have.
This was more, this webinar though was more focused on just the automotive, which I guess we'll incorporate at some point, the PostQuantum, but yeah, I just don't have those readily available. We'd have to get back to you from facts at wolfSSL from us.
Okay, awesome. And I think that was the last of our questions. I'd like to thank everyone for attending this webinar, and thank you, Jacob, for a fantastic presentation. If anyone would like to receive a copy of the slide deck, please feel free to email us at facts@wolfSSL.com, and we'll be happy to send that over to you. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel shortly after this presentation. And if you have any other questions or comments, please feel free to email us at facts@wolfSSL.com, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you so much.